Welcome, and I'll ask Councillor Cranston to open the meeting with a prayer. Thank you.
Tēnā koutou, kua tai mai nei mō tēnei hui. Ko te mihi tuatai ki te atua, nāna nei nā mea katoa. Ko te mihi tuarua ki te whare here e tūnei, whare awarua, tēnā koe. He mihi tēnei ki ngā mātai katoa, e ngā mātai haere moi rā. Kei te hunga ora e tau nei, tēnā koutou katoa. Me karakia, he honore, he kororia ki te atua, he mongaronga ki te whenua, he whakara pai ki ngā tangata te katoa, aia nei, ake nei. Mō reira, e pā e te mātua i te rangi, mena kaupapa ka mua i a tātou, i a mātou, i tēnei rā, i te ingoa o ihu karaiti. Amen.
Thank you, Councillor Cranston. So I'll call for apologies. I don't believe there are any. Beg your pardon. Do you know whether Ms. Spate is zoomed in? She was to zoom in. Does she have the correct time? And we should note apology from her for her personal attendance. Ms. Spate is the member of NZTA who is a designated under the legislation member of this committee, but she is coming from, zooming in from Hawke's Bay today. So I'll just tentatively put, and certainly an apology for personal attendance. She did give that apology for personal attendance. Is there someone prepared to second that, please? Thank you, Councillor Burdett. To the voting delegates of the committee, I'll put that. All those in favour that that apology be accepted, please say aye. Aye. Contrary, carried. Thank you. This is obviously the first meeting of community representatives, and I thank you all for making yourselves available for what is a really important role as this council, regional council, develops its regional land transport plan for the next 10 years. So thank you very much. I appreciate that each and every one of you are busy people, and we will only get the best for this region by using the expertise that you bring to the table. So I really do, I'm grateful that you've made yourselves available. I just ask, many of the things on the front page of our agenda are standard, and it was pointed out at briefing a moment ago that we are creatures of statute, and so we need to go through these items of any declarations of interest from the committee, from the voting committee. None. So we move to the confirmation of the non-confidential minutes of the last meeting, which was the 5th of March, which was just before our community representatives were invited. So you'll move, Councillor Burdett, seconded Councillor Worsnop. All those in favour that they be signed as a true and correct record, please say aye. Contrary, carried. Thank you. And then we have an action sheet. All of our representatives are entitled to committee are entitled to view the action sheet and ask questions from that. These obviously are matters that have been around from last year in many cases, so the last term of council. And they are the process by which actions are given notice to be pursued. And the governance and work plan placeholder is yet to be prepared. We have no requests for leave of absence? No. So we'll move, I think, at this point to acknowledgements and tributes. And because we are being live streamed, I would just like to take them a moment to allow each of you to just introduce yourselves, because we now have a wider group of people who are going to sit around this table and make a contribution. So we'll just very quickly go around the room and introduce ourselves. And before we do that, I'll acknowledge Mr. Wilson from Gisborne District Council, some 3 representatives from NZTA, thank you very much, who are in the room, and interested members of the public, and 2 ladies who are going to give us another deputation. And Mr. Wells, who's sitting there, will be our first deputation. So now, without further ado, Ms. Worsnop, would you like to start the run around the room just quickly?
Thank you. I'm Kerry Worsnop, councillor for the Waipawa ward. Farmer. Thank you.
Kia ora, Andrew Giddham, Chief Operating Officer for Eastland Group.
Campbell Gilmore, Group General Manager of Civic Awards in Williams and Wilshire.
Tēnā tātou Bāni Tūpara, Community Advisor, but here to support tangata whenua interests as well as provide input regarding environmental interests. But can I just say for the record, as far as Hapui Niwi are concerned, I'm not their spokesperson. I'm here to provide advice. The decisions on matters that this committee address will come from the Hapui Niwi as far as tangata whenua issues are concerned. Kia ora.
Right.
Tātou te whānau, ko Colleen Herbert Takuingoa. E tupu ana hau ki Ruatoria, engari e noho ana hau ki Turangi Ināianei. Sort of said to you, as I was born and raised in Ruatoria. After 30 years away, I've come home and based here in Gisborne. I'm the General Manager for CCS Disability Action, so I hope to bring a focus for disabled people, the elderly, safety and accessibility for all. Kia ora.
Kia ora. Welcome to the Mayor. My apologies for not welcoming you earlier. Thank you for sitting in today. Any councillor can sit in any council meeting at any time, but and the Mayor is ex officio of all council meetings. Thank you.
Trent Hicks, for place sitting at the back order.
Steve Wetherall Transport.
Andy Cranston, Councillor, Gisborne City Ward.
Kia ora tātou, Bill Burdett, Councillor for the Waiapa Marakawa Ward, long-serving member of this committee, very interested in road transport and hope that we will be a successful committee this time round.
Kia ora, Councillor Burdett. Thank you very much, everybody. We now move to you, Mr. Wells, and so it's your opportunity to present the material that you brought to us as a deputation today, and I thank you for taking the time to prepare that and for the thought that you have behind potentially some changes on State Highway 2. So over to you. You can present from there, or if you wish to come down here, or is it better from there today? Thank you. The PowerPoint has been loaded and we will be able to watch the images.
Thank you very much. Tēnā koutou katoa. Good afternoon, everybody, and thank you for the opportunity to present. It will be one of these projects. I've been advised that the second one, there will be another opportunity to present that, so I will just briefly mention that at the end. A little background to me. I was born and raised here. I spent about 20 years away from Gisborne, training and wandering around overseas. I came back and raised my family here. I worked for about 11 years for Gisborne City Council, during which time I did a lot of roading work and managed a lot of the city roading program. With local government amalgamation, I continued with Gisborne District Council, and then further local government reorganisation, and I moved on to Opus, and I was doing more state highway roading work with Opus. While I was with the District Council, I also did earthquake risk buildings assessments and extensive investigation of the wastewater, both reticulation and early treatment options for the city. So with that background, I'd like to move on to the first project, State Highway 2 South, the Bartlett's Ascent. Get this one going. Most of you will probably recognise this, about 25 minutes south out of the city. That red spot there is the location over the first hill and at the start of the ascent up to the top of the Whairatas. Thanks to Julie Ward, who is also in this room. This photo shows the first part of the ascent. Down the bottom there is the railway overbridge over State Highway 2, very close or almost over the Maraitaha Bridge number 5. Further up the straight there on the left is the old Bartlett School, and on the right the marae. And then you see the start of the very windy road that goes around behind this ridge and carries on almost out to the right-hand side of the picture there. This is an area, and with about another 1.5 kilometres outside of that picture going uphill, where there have been a lot of heavy vehicle serious accidents, especially downhill loaded heavy vehicles. They come off a reasonably benign section of highway over the tops of the Whairatas, and they come in downhill into this very tight series of bends. To put this into context, there's a bit of history there. Late 1950s to 80s, Ministry of Works was driving a program from the local Gisborne Residency Office, upgrading the Whairatas Road. Around 1989, the government department privatisation program split the local residency office into the consultancy section, Works Consultancy, and the heavy works side of it went to Downers. With this, and the residency office here disappeared. With that, we lost direct advocacy to government for state highway funding, which then became operated from Napier. The last section of the Whairatas upgrade is unfortunately not finished. There was some design done on it, but it dropped off the radar. The problem over this section of road, as I've mentioned, 5 kilometres of very windy road. There are 25 slow bends there, ranging from slow I call from 65 down, and some of these are 35 and 45 kph, and those are the ones that where the bus crashes were. So history of serious heavy vehicle downhill crashes, 2 bus crashes, including fatalities. Factor here is often long-haul driver fatigue. Some of these heavy vehicles are coming from a long way away, from Palmerston, even Wellington. And this section of road is also often a difficult start for local families heading out of town on a long weekend or whatever, with kids getting sick right at the very start of a long haul trip. Now, I have looked at some options there. Fortunately, this is not as clear as it might be, but sorry. the top of that slide, there's a section fairly flat, but it comes through under the railway bridge there. There are two very tight bends there. The section I've really spent time on is from the marae uphill to where the logging road, access road, goes in on the right as you go south. The existing road around here, if you can see the pale white lines, is a very windy section all the way through here. And even the section out here, which is where the two bus crashes were in a gully off that. Now the alignment I've shown in black there is smooths out that alignment. A lot of those small ridges that create the reverse curves further down would quite easily be taken off. But up further up here, there's a small diversion through, which would require a cut through the ridge. But that is the real problem area there where those buses crashed. Further up from that, there are some more reverse curves which would also be very easily or realigned to give much better travel. Right, the new alignment that I was proposing is this one through here, alignment 2. That is on the north side of the existing ridge, or alignment 2A is on the south side of the next ridge over. Considerations we're looking at here include land purchase costs. Obviously, staying with the existing alignment, that is less. Going to new alignments, you've got a higher land purchase. Geological stability. My reading of this geology is that the south and east facing slopes are probably more stable than the north and west side. So that's why I've put in 2A as well as 2 there. Live highway traffic management is a huge factor in construction. Obviously, trying to keep at least one lane open while the construction is going on is difficult. So maybe a new alignment would be much less cost and problem there. The last one was the weather effects, which at present there is some hazard of icing on the south side of the ridge in winter. If you're on the north side, then that hazard is much reduced. The government roading objectives, obviously the three key words are safety, connectivity and resilience. Eliminating dangerous bends, heads up the safety one, ease of travel, reduced travel time, connectivity and reduced risk of accidents and delays is good for resilience. I'm not too familiar with the funding options, but I would think there's potential for provincial growth funding to help with this project. So what I'm aiming for with this presentation is to get your support for funding for detailed investigation and presentation of or deciding on the best option for this road. As I mentioned, the second project, I will just very briefly show. It's in that red circle down the bottom. This came to light for me with the closure of the Waiwiki Gorge a number of times over recent years, where heavy traffic and everybody heading north has to actually go south. Now, if you have to go south, you have to go right down to Bayview and then come back up the State Highway 5 route. Since the 1990s, I've been looking at a shortcut through here to get my kids through for a week skiing on Ruapehu, but it has much better or much far wider implications than that. In that circle, you can see the yellow shortcut across there, 24k instead of 64k to get through onto State Highway 5. Now, I've been advised that I can present some more detail on that at another time. So, thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Wells. I think because the Bartlett's Hill falls very particularly into our region, on the other does provide benefits to road users, I thought probably we should confine ourselves to Bartlett's Hill today and maybe have Mr. Wells come back on Tipahui at the next meeting. So the process with deputations is that we aren't able to debate them with the individual who presents deputations, but we can ask questions and then council can ask officers to do some further work. So I will open it for questions to Mr. Wells of his presentation. Thank you, Councillor Cranston.
Thank you. I was sitting here having a deja vu moment. I was thinking, I'm sure I've discussed this with John in the past. And then when you said ski road, I thought, oh, that's right. Question is, you mentioned the last section was not funded and hence it wasn't happening. Does that compromise the project by not being able to do that last section? Sorry. You mentioned in your early on in the presentation that the last section was not funded, so it wasn't part of the project. Does not being able to do the last section compromise the project? Or?
Oh, yes, the last section of the Whairatas upgrade, which is this one I'm presenting now. That program of upgrades being driven by the Ministry of Works then started with the Maury Hill improvements, and they worked north. The last one I think was that long uphill passing bay, just a little bit further south from the area that I'm looking at, probably 2/3 of the way up to the summit on the side of the Wharis. They had started looking at design for that, design for this section, but it didn't get any further. It was after our local office of the Ministry of Works disappeared.
Are there any other questions? Thank you, Councillor Worsnop.
So I had two questions, and thank you for mentioning the Carsick children. I have a long and very colourful, unfortunately, history with car sickness on that hill. So my question was, first of all, do you have a preferred option and why? And my second question was, do you have any idea of the reduction in travel time that your scenarios would provide?
Reduction in travel time, that's, I haven't really got into that detail yet, but I think probably 4 or 5 minutes. Yeah. And sorry, you had another question there too.
Did you have a preferred option of the three that you've presented?
The third option. Preferred option. I don't have a preferred option at this point. I think it hinges a lot on the relative costs of traffic management of a live road during improvements on the existing alignment versus probably land acquisition costs on the other alignment. And that would have to be part of the study for the.
I think Councillor Warsop was meaning 2A or 2B of the draft, but that will come out in any investigation and engineering and geotech work that might be done subsequently to today.
Yeah.
Are there any further questions to Mr. Wells? Thank
My
you.
name through you, Madam Chair, or if I could just ask, just in terms of procedure, when a proposal is being presented, is it usual for the paperwork to be presented on the day, or do we as advisors get access to that information before the hui?
The paperwork is usually presented on the day on all deputations of individuals come, and we have many deputations to all of our meetings of council. The material comes on the day. It is something that it's a process that the public have the opportunity to present, and then that material is provided to council officers and some workup is done on it if is a will to proceed with it. So it's not something you would get an analysis of in your agenda.
Thank you. And my second question is more again a procedural one. So I'm assuming that issues of consultation with tangata whenua and also environmental impacts, that's a matter for the committee subsequent to the proposal being presented.
Absolutely. All of that would happen if it's determined that it is worthy to proceed, and in a year where the regional land transport plan is under consideration, then it may well be. But council officers will have some conversations with our representatives around the NZTA board. Mr. Post is sitting behind you, and some work will potentially be done on it, and then all of those other rightly so consultation discussions will happen. Nothing, with the greatest respect, it won't go in a hurry from here to reality. But it has to start somewhere, and I thank Mr. Wells for bringing it to the table, because if we don't get the input from our community, then we don't have the opportunity to see things through another set of eyes. Thank you. Thanks very much, Mr. Wells. I just think because we want to do a few other things today, we'll invite you back to present on the Tipahui issue at our September meeting. Thank you. Thanks very much indeed. I neglected to invite Emma Spate because I can't see her, and I've got so used to being able to see people on a Zoom meeting, and I thought we might have had her faced up in one of our screens, but we don't. But Emma can hear us. Thank you, Mr. Wells. And so, Emma, would you just like to introduce yourself to the meeting, please?
Kia ora tātou, ko Emma Spaitaho. I'm the Director of Regional Relationships for the Lower North Island for Waka Kotahi. And so I've been working...
Perhaps you can turn your mic up, please.
Turn my mic up. I don't have a mic. Is it the volume on your system? Can you hear me?
We are turning up the mic in the council chambers, but it's not being very effective. That's much better.
I haven't done anything, so you must have made it work.
Thank you. And I apologise, Ms. Spate, for not introducing you at the beginning, and it was exactly that. I was expecting to see you looking at us on a screen, and so my apologies.
Kia ora tātou.
Could you just repeat your introduction, because nobody heard it the first time?
Ko Emma Spaitaho. I'm the Director of Regional Relationships for the Lower North Island for Waka Kotahi, New Zealand Transport Agency. I've been working in the region for Waka Kotahi for the last 3 years, and for that I was Deputy Chief Executive at the Ministry of Social Development, and I did some work in the region as well. So I feel like I'm building an understanding of the people and the roads and the transport challenges that face the region, and the great opportunities that also face the region. And I'm delighted to have our community members joining the RTC today. Look forward to meeting you in person soon, and having some ongoing conversations about how we can work together. Kia ora.
Kia ora. Thank you very much. I'd now like to invite Ms. Gillian Ward and, sorry, I'm having a minor blank. Katrina Duncan, are you going to both speak to us, or just Ms. Ward? Around a potential government-funded project that's available right now. If you could just speak to us briefly, thank you very much. Can you turn the microphone on, please? Thanks.
Tēnā koutou, ko Gillian Ward Aho. Karina Duncan. Tēnā koe Emma. We're going to talk about your Innovating Streets for People Fund, Waka Kotahi Fund. Can you put our picture up? During the lockdown, we were all familiar with a lot more people cycling and walking on our streets. It's been a worldwide trend, and the cycle shops have reported surges of selling more bikes and repairing bikes that people have hauled out of their garages. They haven't been maintained for a long time. We were lucky in Gisborne, we had beautiful weather during level 4 of the lockdown, and a lot of people were out and about, but it's been mostly, I think, because people have perceived the streets to be more safe and pleasant with fewer cars. So it's a trend we'd love to see continue. Waka Kotahi has have this fund, Innovating Streets for People, which they've had ready to roll out, and it was pretty much ready at the start of the pandemic. They rejigged it a little bit to make it fit with the COVID-19 things and brought in some extra innovations into the fund, but it's really about making streets more people friendly. They say that the pilot fund will help councils create more people-friendly spaces in our towns and cities. From their, I can make this one.
While the technology is making up its mind whether it's going to work, on page 42 of your agenda, that there is a reference in the council officer's report to this fund. Thank you.
Cool. The pilot fund is being made available to encourage interim treatments and trials, which could then become permanent. It will offer 90% of the costs of a project put forward by a council. This picture is High Street in Auckland, where they've done some interesting innovations, extending the footpaths and putting planter boxes to reduce the traffic speed and make more space for people. Our Inner Harbour development is an example of a permanent, a place where it's been a permanent basis, that more people space has been created, but these, it's a slow thing to progress, a permanent change, and there's a risk of getting it wrong. The idea of having trials and experiments is really a very innovative and clever idea. Waka Kotahi are looking for projects using tactical urbanism techniques such as pilots, pop-ups and interim treatments that make it safer or easier for people to move around or access community spaces. And they want to hear from councils of all sizes. This is the intersection of Wellesley Street and Sales Street in Auckland, where they've taken out 17 car parks and reduced the curvature of the intersection to make traffic approach more slowly. They've created an inner city park and a wide, easy space for people to cross the road. And again, speed of traffic has reduced in that example. They say projects could be anything from piloting a new walking or cycling facility to pop-up community-led street events, trialling a low traffic neighbourhood, or reallocating more street space for people. We don't want projects that create more space for cars or those that are permanent in nature. Projects need to strategically align with both the Innovating Streets programme objectives and local council strategies and plans. They must also be able to demonstrate the value of using tactical urbanism to advance a future permanent change and explain how they'll move to a permanent change. That's what they're saying on their package. Locally, I think we've got a couple of really good examples that stand out. From our spatial plan, proposals for the CBD to create both a Gladstone Road shared space and a Grey Street lineal park. These ideas have been socialised already in the discussions prior to the spatial plan launch, and they're seen by GDC as opportunities for improving CBD connections and CBD development. In the spatial plan, it says a thriving city centre is often a reflection of a thriving local economy. Our city centre covers a large area and offers limited connection to the beach or to the Taruhuru River. This means it lacks vibrancy and does not take advantage of many opportunities to be the economic hub of the city. Things that we could think of if we did an application for innovating streets for this project could be, for example, resources for community engagement, community event with Gladstone Road temporarily closed, temporary installations to trial traffic flow and for CBD businesses acceptance. There are case studies in the Innovating Streets for People Fund on Waka Kotahi's website, and they look at the Octagon experience in Dunedin and a trial on Wharf Street in Tauranga. And the feedback from people is that the pedestrian numbers increase, vehicle speeds decreased, businesses reported more activity, the use of space in front of businesses increased, and more hospitality businesses have opened. Another thing that stands out to me for Tairāwhiti could be safe school streets. And this is another example that's been shown in Auckland. They looked at 6 streets and different innovations they brought in there were widening footpaths, including a scooter cycle lane, providing additional crossing facilities, removing roadside parking during pick-up and drop-off, and intensive promotion and behavioural change programs. And looking at the wider school catchment area, slowing traffic speeds within the school catchment area to encourage students to independently move to school. So I think it's something that we could really look at.
Thank you very much. In our agenda at page 42, which you might not have a copy of, but Ms. Conn can give you one to take home, council officers are looking at that potential project. So I think, can I just ask you to respond, Ms. Kohuri, and how you might be seeking any information that's been provided today?
Yeah, so we've definitely been aware of this this opportunity. The 8th of May turnaround was probably a bit too quick for us to meet, but we're definitely looking for opportunities to maximise and access this opportunity. And again, we're just factoring in that they need to be delivered by June next year, and what meaningful ones we can actually do. So we definitely will be coming with some proposals.
Would you like to comment?
I just
Ms.
want to
Duncan?
add that we've had this mode shift and we've had this change of behaviour. So the idea of being able to, in line with the spatial plan, put something in quickly when people already are behaving the way they are, would potentially have less conflict than it would if you wait. You've already got people who have changed the way they move. So putting something in, and as I said, it's a trial. It's not a permanent fixture or structure, which means that you can actually play with it. It's fun. It's a game for the next year, and that can be part of the way you can decide whether that whole plan for Grey Street promenading or whatever you call it works. Waiting till June next year, we've lost this huge opportunity where we've actually moved people to a different way of behaving.
I think the information we have, it looks like a new funding round opens on the 8th of June this year and closes on the 3rd of July. And there is the work that's been done for that new cycleway around the village of Uwawa. So, and a lot of work has been done on that already. So I think council officers should get back to people who have an interest in it and pursue it. So is there any quick question to the presenters? Thank you, Councillor Cranston.
Yeah, has this got a status connected to it like projects do at the moment, like that shovel-ready status or anything like that?
No, not that I'm aware of. It does say that they want plans, they want projects that are in plan. So to trial things that are in plan, it does say that in some of the same, but it's not a shovel-ready because there's no digging. You're actually just putting things in the way.
Please don't. We haven't got time for silly questions today. Thank you. Ms. Herbert, did you wish to ask a question?
How long is the funding available for? It looks like it's just available till just after that June period to be delivered within the year. So it's a small opportunity, something that we wish to capitalise or to see capitalised on by this committee. Yeah.
Any other question? No. Then thank you both very much for coming and presenting today. And I think council officers will be back in touch because they are doing some work on it. So we move to our agenda. And the first paper on the agenda, I beg your pardon, I don't think I've dotted off. Is there any extraordinary business? No. Notice of motion? No. Adjourned business. That is paper item 9.1, which was in front of us last meeting, but that was prior to the community advisors being interviewed. So that paper lay on the table, and the first page of that still appears here as item 20/41. So the actual paper of appointment is the next paper, page 18, and it's item 20/108. And it recommends the appointment of the community advisors to the Regional Transport Committee, and I'll read the names. Andrew Gaddam, Barney Tupera, Campbell Gilmore, Colleen Herbert, Millie, Steve Weatherall and Matt Broderick. Council's process is that we have to raise our hand to make appointments. Councillors have an opportunity to vote, and Ms. Sure. And Ms. Spate has a vote. I'm not sure who's reading, who's citing Ms. Spate because I can't see it. Been moved by Councillor Burdett, and seconded Councillor Cranston. Yes, I'm moving them en bloc, and we need to raise our hands. All those, and it's councillors only have the vote. Raise our hands. All those in favour, please say aye. And can
Aye.
someone? I hear Ms. Spate saying aye. Thank you very much. Thank you. And just to be tidy, Ms. Conn tells me that we need to note the content of the report of the previous month, which I thought we did at the time actually, the date of the 5th of March meeting. So the paper on 14 of 22, 14 of 52, thank you. Ms. Worsnop moved. Seconded Councillor Burdett. That the paper be noted. All those in favour say aye. Contrary carried. Sorry, Councillor Cranston, a question?
Yeah, there was 9 areas of representation we're looking for, and we've got 6 positions. Do we feel that we're still well covered, or was there a lack of a representation area that we?
Our understanding, Councillor Cranston, from the participation at the interviewing was that some of the people around this table bring representation of more than, we were never looking for 9 people. There is a range of skills that, and we are very fortunate to have these people here. So a range of skills is brought to the table by those whose names have been put forward.
Excellent.
Okay. So we move now to paper on page 22 of your agenda, the Regional Land Transport Strategic Framework. And this is some feedback to inform the refinement of it, and I'll pass over to Mr. Sipsky. And I have to apologise that I need to leave, and I will be passing the chair over to Councillor Burdett. Thank you very much.
Just before Yannick gets started, again, as you know, as a result of COVID, a workshop was planned with you. We're now seeking feedback from you on some of the proposed strategic objectives that Yannick will take us through. So the report is really to receive feedback so that we can align our plan to your feedback.
Thank you, everyone. There's no easy way to do this. It's got a lot of kind of technical, strategic stuff to do. But what I might do is just run through the basic framework that we touched on before, and then just get your feedback. What we're proposing here is a bit of a starter for 10, so nothing set in concrete. We're all very interested to hear what you think about where we've landed and how we should refine. So as you know, RTC has a role under the LTMA to prepare a regional land transport plan. We write them every 6 years, but every 3 we need to review. So we're in the rewrite phase right now. Most importantly, the transport plan is the gateway for accessing funding through the the National Land Transport Fund. All projects that require funding from that fund must be included in the plan, in the transport plan. So it's a very, very important part of what we do. Once we land on a regional land transport plan, it's submitted to NZTA for their consideration. In any case, the framework, as we touched base on before, there's kind of two main parts. There's the strategic context and the framework, which is what we'll discuss today, and then there's the investment priorities and the program of work. So
it's critically important we get this right, and that we put a priority on what the district needs, because when it goes to Wellington, it is re-vetted and has to line up with other requests from around the country for funding. So from that perspective, just so that we all understand how critically important to our district this plan is.
So we started the process on 5th of March with RTC. And what we'll be looking at is just a bit of a discussion around the vision and the strategic objectives, and perhaps the investment priorities as well. So just in terms of the vision, the previous RLTP didn't have one. So this is the first cut for us. And what we started with was a cut from Tairāwhiti 2050, our spatial plan. And what we're proposing is something like our communities and businesses are connected to each other and to our markets by a safe, sustainable and resilient transport network. That's a starter. So we're quite keen to have any feedback on the vision, whether it's reasonable, whether it needs to change.
I guess you've all had a good look at what's here. Any questions?
Well, if it's reasonable, Mr. Chair, then we'll move forward.
Can I ask Yannick, what time frame have we got?
That's a very good question, Mr. Chair. I would suggest we develop the strategic framework as quickly as we can, perhaps by July. So we can move into the investment priorities and the program of activities, which is another key piece of work. But what we would like to do as well is to shore up our schedule of workshops and meetings for this year so we can give you a much more definitive answer. But certainly within the next 4 to 6 weeks would be ideal.
Thank you for that. I see you listening intently. Emma, have you got some comment to make in terms of where we are?
Yes, look, this is a vitally important part of the role of the RTC and in representing both the aspirations that the region has and how you come to your priorities and demonstrating the strategic logic that will support investment decisions. So I think it's great that you've got that vision in there that obviously comes out of wider regional work that's been done, and it articulates a set of things that are both easy to grasp and easy for communities to see the value of them, but also are things that we can then flow through to the rest of the document and identify what exactly is meant and how that can help prioritise decision making in the region. So I think it's a good start. This is a technical process and it can be quite challenging at this point. But I agree, getting this end of it nailed in the next month or so is really important so that we can move into the more detailed discussions through the second half of the year.
What about our agency staff sitting over there? Do you have any input in terms of where we are at present?
Yes, so we would have input into this through the technical advisory group, part of that process. So there have been some discussions already. So look, I think your vision is don't think there'll be many regions that would have a different vision. It's kind of it's what everyone's after. So I don't think we can argue too much about that. I suppose probably some of the discussions that we need to have are in the problem statements and whether or not those are correctly worded and how we tweak those to sort of really deliver to that outcome, which is probably the big challenge for us.
Thank you for that, Oliver. Have you got anything else to add, Yannick? Or any questions?
Well, just in response to Mr. Posting's comments, yep, we thrashed this out with our technical advisory group. And we also engaged a consultant to help us along the way as well. So through the guidance of the TAG, as well as our consultant, what we've done is we've considered our previous strategy under existing plan, and we've worked them up, I guess, is what we've done to something that's more fit for purpose for our current need. So I guess broadly, we're kind of asking the committee here whether they feel comfortable with it. Is this language appropriate? Do we need to change anything? Does anything stand out?
Councillor?
Thank you. Perhaps something Mr. Tupera might want to comment on. You did mention that we wouldn't want to take a draft to iwi, we want to get in earlier. What format would be most appropriate to take them? Because you've got to put something in front of them somehow. Yeah.
Through you, Mr. Chair. So the process, in my view, would be, so we've basically got concepts in front of us at the moment in terms of a way forward as part of the process to put this plan together. It would be by way of email to the key people who represent our hapu and iwi locally about that, and possibly to invite them in to have a short hui here, and I'm happy to facilitate that hui with your permission, Mr. Chair, depending on how the council representatives want to participate in that, but certainly bring them all in and just talk about the concepts, what is proposed, without saying to them, these are the decisions that have been made, because I think it's very early yet for decisions that have been made anyway. What are your initial views? But more importantly, what should come out of that hui should be they indicate to us the process they want to involve themselves in going forward. Mindful that we have a timeline to stick to. We've got staff who have to work on stuff based on what comes out of hui as we go along. And it can be done quickly, but the important thing is to involve them early. And that's what I would suggest.
Through the Chair, can I propose that our, I guess in terms of next steps with page 30 of your agenda, that we add in a consultation with iwi action to be completed, and obviously you'd be invited.
Thank you. No further questions? Not, would someone move the recommendations?
Just, Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Just on the more detailed information under the problem statements and benefits, I do have a question in terms of the third problem statement, where you say that parts of the transport system are not fit for purpose, limiting opportunities for improved economic and social development. The term fit for purpose, I think, is quite a generic term. What is meant by that in this context?
I've just been reminded that we need to discuss and talk through the strategic objectives on page 24.
We've got a reply here, but there's
it's a fair question, Ms. Spate. It was probably just a matter of the choice of wording. And I think we'd probably have to go back to our consultant to really flesh out what we were meaning by that statement, by the intent. I can't provide an exact reason for you now.
Yeah.
But we can definitely add light to it. But this is the nature of policy writing, is to clarify the intent of the wording, and we accept that there's plenty of work to do in that space.
Mm.
I will address this, sorry, through the chair. So that fit for purpose was put in there as it was kind of on purposefully generic, because it was recognized that our original, or like the last set of problem statements that we had did not include all components that were coming through, all the priorities coming through on the GPS, and particularly around access and health and safety. So it was really trying to make the problem statements more open to perhaps align better. But yeah, it would be good to get some feedback on what wording would be more appropriate.
And from my perspective, that wording does not help to determine how I would distinguish whether something adds more or less value to the outcomes the region's trying to achieve. So if by fit for purpose you mean not resilient, not safe, not capable of carrying HMPV vehicles, it's A, whether it's captured in one of the other problem statements, or B, if there's something specific. Otherwise, it's too generic to use as a assisting decision-making tool. So I just encourage, if you go back through that process and see if you can identify what was intended.
Just while we're talking about the problem statements, I've got a couple of notes here, but on different problem statements. So with the top right-hand corner, ongoing challenges of access and conflict between modes of transport make it difficult to provide sustainable transport options. I wondered if we should include sustainable and inclusive transport options, because those challenges, they affect more than just the sustainability of it. And the next one down, physical network constraints and driver behaviours increase personal risks and contribute to unacceptable levels of deaths. I wasn't that happy with that. I'm not sure whether network constraints and driver behaviours fully captures what leads to accidents on our roads. I think it's a little bit too, I struggled with that a little bit. I thought we probably needed to make it a bit more descriptive, I suppose. Physical network constraints, what does that mean? What physical network constraints? Driver behaviours, what driver behaviours? Is it all driver behaviours? Yeah.
The team will definitely take that on board, and I think the opportunity is when we develop that program, we understand more in depth what those behaviours are, and then the program to respond to those types of behaviours and in the physical network constraints. So you've had some pointed out to you earlier today with a perspective. We know we've got other physical issues within the network. So it's really capturing it at a high level, and then the program seeks to kind of address these high level matters.
Any further issues? Emma?
No, thank you.
Commentary? No? Not yet. Moved by Councillor Cranston. Can I have a seconder?
Sure.
Thank you. I'll put that to the table. All those in favour, please say aye. Contrary, carried. We move to page 34. Regional update from Waka Kotahi. Just going to do that. Oh, sorry.
So I think I'm going to try, actually no, I've just failed. Heather, can I get you to run the slideshow, and I will just call the title of the slide, if that's okay. It's up and running. I also understand that you have a copy in front of you if that's the easy one. So do we have COVID-19 new ways of working is the first slide. And I think it's really just important for us to note that our teams have done a huge amount of work both to shut down work sites and to get them up and running. And I know all of the council teams have done an incredible amount of work on that as well. And we've had to implement new health and safety measures. And it has taken a lot of time and energy. With any luck, we'll be moving to alert level 1 next week, and that will enable us to move a lot faster and through a number of the protocols that have had to be put in place. One of the other aspects of COVID-19 that we're working through is obviously it has fiscal impacts for the council, and it has fiscal impacts for us because our revenue comes through fuel excise duties and road user charges. And when there's been a massive drop in the use of vehicles, so our revenue takes a massive drop. So we're working through really carefully to maintain our ability to fund the commitments we have. But we also face some increased costs, particularly with our larger projects where there are penalty clauses for events such as these. So we're just working through all of that, and we'll continue to work carefully in partnership with you on that. If we move to the next slide, Arataki. Arataki is our longer term view of the land transport system and the challenges that face each of us. And we've already released version 1 and now onto version 1.1, and we're currently working on version 2. And this is going to take into account quite specifically how COVID-19 has impacted nationally and regionally. Now we've just received in the last couple of days some analytical work that we commissioned Martin Jenkins to do. That's actually already up on our website for anyone who wants to access it. So I really encourage officers to access and use that. It has a national overview of the impact of COVID-19 and a regional breakdown as well. So we'll be taking that into account as we start to complete level 2, version 2 rather. And that will help to inform and make really visible the approach that we're taking to the land transport system, which, as you know, is it's long-term assets that we need to be thinking about. The next slide, our investment decision-making framework. Now, we consulted on this earlier in the year, and we have this ready to be released later this month or early this month. And we have deferred one component, which is the investment prioritisation method. And so we're just waiting to see what we get from the government in terms of government policy statement, and whether there's any shift in the priorities that government gives us that respond to COVID-19. Regional land transport plans is the next slide. So here we are obviously working with you, and so that's a part of our work. And by and large, we are wanting to see those draft front ends this month, and then we continue to work through that through the consultation periods towards the end of the year and finalisation by April of next year. So we've worked a lot with what's called the Transport Special Interest Group, TSIG, which has representatives from the organisations and regional councils involved in developing RLTPs to make sure that we're providing consistent guidance and making sure that these are as concise and helpful as they can be. Transport Agency Investment Proposal. Now, this is obviously a really important input to the RLTP process. It is our proposal, including our State Highway Activity Management Plan, of what we will be submitting to the RLTPs. Now, we have had to delay this until August because of the need to consider the impact that COVID-19's had on revenue and what we can include in that proposal. And so we'll keep working with you on that and have that available as soon as possible. Another new area of innovation is the Roading Efficiency Group. Has been working on developing some standard reports on all road controlling authorities in terms of relative performance and levels of activity and investment. And so they'll be starting to make these available at the end of this month. And they enable all road controlling authorities, so that's all the councils. The DOC has some roads, we obviously are a road controlling authority as well, to look across and see where there's really good practice underway, learn from each other, and understand what's happening right across the whole system. So again, a really great opportunity to make visible what's happening right across the country and share good practice. And we've done that jointly with Local Government New Zealand. The REG board itself is made up of 3 senior officials from Waka Kotahi and 5 local government representatives, and it's been running since 2012. So an important part of our system and learning good practice. We've already had a discussion about the Innovating Streets Pilot Fund. So this is a $7 million fund, which can be expanded if we have good proposals, and they're funded at 90% FAR for temporary projects with a pathway to permanent. So it's to test those ideas, see if they work in practice, and let the community experience them before going to full implementation and the additional investment for that. So we've already released a set of COVID-19 response projects that were to enable social distancing on city streets and some other cycling initiatives. And we've the first tranche of the main program is about to be finalised, and announcements in the next couple of weeks, I'm hoping. And the second tranche is now open for those proposals. And just an important note is they do need to be temporary projects with a pathway to permanence. We did have a few proposals that were ineligible, but as was discussed earlier, if you've got good ideas and options that have been worked through, it's a really great opportunity to get them up and running quickly and see if they work for your city and for your people. Urban Development Program. So again, this is another guide that we're working across government to help support really good urban development and tools in urban planning and so on. So it's a really important part of our business. We certainly understand government's very keen to see how transport and active modes fit in with urban planning, and so really valuable to be able to contribute the tools and case studies that we've been able to pull together in this. So that will be coming out in July. Next set of that, Accessible Streets consultation. So again, here we've got a set of rule changes that take into account the changing micro-mobility devices available. I know that there's probably some people in the room who use new e-scooters, and ensuring that they're safe, that councils are providing consistent guidance and so on for those tools. So there's 9 proposals sitting within this consultation. So it includes the types of vehicles and devices, a framework for use of shared paths and cycle paths, giveaway rules, how to protect vulnerable users, how to restrict parking on berms, giving buses priority when exiting bus stops. So there's a whole range sitting in there. And again, really important to have a say and provide feedback to make sure that we get that framework right. And finally, on the national level, we've talked previously about our new Safe Car, Right Car website that enables people to check by popping in the number plate of their car and see how it rates for safety. And TradeMe has now launched a new search filter so people can find the safest vehicle in the price range that they're interested in. This is a fantastic tool, really important. If you follow our Facebook page, you'll see that we've recently done a trial using Australian crash test facilities, where we tested a 1-star car against a 5-star car, and really significant difference around with the 1-star vehicle having a 72% chance that the person inside that vehicle would suffer a serious injury. So really want to just encourage people to use that and find the safest car in their price range. Moving into the region, we're strengthening bridges, and now just touch on our program of activities that we've been working on. Some of these are slightly outside the region, but obviously really important for connecting the region, and the Tahanui Bridge is one of those. And widening this bridge so that it is a full 2 lanes is really important. And so we have the design underway, and we're beginning the process of iwi and hapu engagement, so that we can get that process ready for a summer construction start. Next, we've got the set of provincial growth funded activities that we're working on. The State Highway 2 HPMV Potiki to Gisborne, which involves strengthening 6 bridges. State Highway 2 Waikari Gorge, which obviously is to the south, but again, a really important connector route for the Tairāwhiti region. State Highway 35 route security and resilience. State Highway 35 Makamuka realignment, and the State Highway 2 and 35 passing opportunities. Now in the detail, which you'll be able to see in the report in front of you, we've just got the detailed report on where each of those projects is at. There's a considerable amount of funding in each of these projects, and the way that they're working alongside the GDC managed PGF projects is to look at models of social procurement to ensure that we are contributing to sustainable local employment, and really trying to make sure this work helps to, as well as providing a better transport network, that we're actually supporting people into employment at the same time. So you can see there, passing opportunities is working, getting along quite well at the moment, and we've just let some tenders on that, and we're about to complete the interactive map that we'll have on the website. There's a lot of sites that are involved in this one and the resilience one, so an interactive site will enable people to zoom in, have a look at those sites and see where they're at, and then we'll also be using our journey planner information to advise where the activities are underway. So really important and significant programs for the region. Waikari Gorge I'll touch on in the next slide, and then the HPMV route has been opened, and we've completed the Aroaro Bridge and the Wairika Gorge, and then we've got 5 other bridges to upgrade for long-term sustainable use for those heavier vehicles. And again, that's really important, freight and people connected to the north. The next slide, the projects in the Tairāwhiti Roading Package, Waikari Gorge. There you can see works being done to design a new stretch of road that will reduce the exposure to a part of the route that's very steep and windy, going right down through to the bottom of the gorge with the bridge and then up that slope. I've driven up that slope when it wasn't quite that bad, but it was certainly down to 1 lane. So that will provide the opportunity for us to have a really resilient route. So we're funded currently to do the design and pre-implementation work for that route. And those orange and white lines are the 2 options that we're proceeding with in terms of planning and identifying which one will be the best permanent replacement for that section of the road. Next slide has the projects in the Tairāwhiti Roading Package passing opportunities, And you can see there that we have red dots for existing passing opportunities and yellow for the potential passing opportunities. And also looking at where that can be combined with improved cell site reception for mobile phones. And finally there, we've got the Makakamuka Bridge work, which is ongoing, and we're looking to complete the cultural impact assessment through the middle of this year, and then aim to be moving towards construction. And finally on the Motu Bridge, which was opened recently, which was a fantastic event, and we're now looking at some additional work on the storyboard and some planting and minor safety works to be completed. Oh, the Waikari Gorge again. And then we've got, this is part of our ongoing program of work over the 3 years. We have the State Highway Maintenance Operations and Renewals, and that's our lane reseals and rehabilitations. And some of those were delayed due to the COVID-19 lockdown, and so now we'll have to move those into the next construction season. But the vast majority of those were completed, the ones scheduled for this season. We've got the Turiha dropout emergency work, which is on program to be completed. And finally, the Tairāwhiti deployment package, which was initially awarded from the PGF to look at employing forestry workers who had been impacted by the forestry downturn that hit right at the start of the COVID lockdown process. But now that those forestry workers are back at work, we're looking at working with MSD to identify people who can contribute to the removal of hazardous trees and enhanced maintenance works in the region. And finally, speed and safety. You know, this is a really important conversation, and we've had a number of submitters come to the committee. So on the Gisborne to Tapuia Springs townships and beaches, we've had a huge amount of submissions, and over 150 people attended the community drop-in centre sessions. So we've had the team working on this has had to do other work in the COVID-19 response. So that final speed review outcome hasn't been through formal approval yet. We're looking to get that through a process as soon as we can, which we have some regular approval meetings that happen, and we're trying to see if we can do this one a little faster than that. But otherwise it will go to a decision hopefully late July. And then it's a process of us working through implementation. So we have to go through a process then of identifying how we get all the signs changed, and then we can confirm a date for that to go live. On the Gisborne to Tapuia Springs open road section, we've done public engagement, which is that first step. And once we've assessed all of that, we'll need to come back later in the year with consultation, which is where we come with the actual proposals for speeds. And that will be later this year. And the northern section, we're still we're awaiting the completion of the technical assessment, which will inform that engagement phase. So still a bit of work to do there, but hopefully we'll have that first phase decision out pretty soon. So that's the presentation. Happy to take any questions.
Thank you for that, Emma. It's quite comprehensive and detailed. Any questions of Emma?
Thank you. I just said, Emma, that I did have a question, but it was probably more for staff than yourself. With the temporary projects, we virtually, and maybe Dave, that might be the position to answer it, we virtually had one of those ready to go, and that was Rootney Road. We were going to do a pilot on there, and it was going to involve boxes and that to sort out the traffic movement and that, and it got scuttled. I just wonder whether we could pick up something like that for the same initiative, because I know that the routes may have changed in that, so maybe we could do a similar thing to confirm another route, or are we further ahead and we don't need that, or
What do you think? Because that does sound like a straight description of what we were planning.
Through the chair, one of the things we're going to be looking at for our applications going forward is how we can get funding for the changes. So as you say, Councillor Cranston, Rutini Road, the trial that we had proposed there before that project moved in a different way. We are looking at which are the best interventions for us to be trialling through the CBD and some other areas that we'll put forward into that application, but we just need the time to come back as staff as to which ones we're going to be putting forward and trialling as part of it.
Any questions of Emma?
Thank you for your presentation. I just have some quick questions regarding the Taha Nui Bridge. You refer there in your report to Morehu Piwharangi as your Māori engagement advisor. Is he in place simply for that project, or are you using him across the board in the other areas?
I'd have to ask our local team that, Ollie or Helen.
Through the chair, no, he's been engaged to work with us permanently going forward.
Well, thank you for that. Again, in terms of the plan we're putting together, he'll be a key participant in that process of consultation. That's Morehu Piwharangi, given his role. Next question I have refers to you, and you refer to a number of bridges that are going to be, they're in the process of being built. I'm just interested in the names of those bridges. How are those names arrived at?
And so,
bridges.
oh,
They're already named bridges.
All right.
They're not new bridges to be built.
All right. But just to follow through you again, Mr. Chair, following on from that, anything new like new bridges, how would names be determined or decided on?
So generally, we for the new Motu Bridge, it was in engagement with local iwi and an agreement there. So you'll see the name is no longer the Motu Bridge. It's a name which escapes me, but it's always with consultation with communities.
Thank you for that. One final question through you again, Mr. Chair. In terms of new roads being built and also maintenance of existing roads, the materials that are being used for those projects, do you undertake an environmental impacts assessment on the materials that are used in creating or making those roads?
So all material has resource consent. So through the resource consent process, the material, we would go through that process. So it's not just dug up at night, you know, it's done through the proper process.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
All right. Well, there's no further questions.
Yep.
Sorry, Andrew.
Through Mr. Chair. Emma, is there any indication of what the cost of the Waikaria Gorge might be, or what the program might be going forward? And I guess what's the process from here on in?
sure. So it will be a large project. The actual costs of it will be determined in the current phase that we're going through, which is determining which of those options goes ahead. And there's quite a lot of technical work needed because of the nature of the terrain there. So it is a large capital project. So I can probably say we're well over 20 million. Probably that's double that and going up, but I couldn't put a number on it right now. The process from here is what the pre-implementation enables us to do is to go to the full design and also look at property acquisition. And then we would go through the process. It sits in the Hawke's Bay region as far as the RTC is concerned. And so they need to be prioritising it in their RLTP. So we'll be submitting that to them as part of our plans for the future. But obviously, we look carefully at these key connected regional routes. So, for example, while these routes aren't in your region and why the Waioeka Gorge isn't in your region, I work with the neighbouring groups to ensure that they're picked up and that the importance to the neighbouring regions actually recognised in the way we prioritise those. In terms of how close or far away it is from funding, I can't give you an answer on that. It will be determined by the RLTP process and available funds, and then obviously it will be hotly contested as usual.
So I had a question just on the Tairāwhiti regional update. The $1.5 million under the Tairāwhiti deployment package, is that what applies to our state highways of that broader package? Because the package itself was quite a bit bigger than that, wasn't it?
No, that's just state highways. It's just it was for the forestry redeployment.
Specifically for tree removal?
It's been broadened to other works,
Okay.
culvert cleaning,
Cool.
all works like that, but with a focus on job creation.
Yeah, but so how secure is that funding in light of the fact that there's lots of things being re-looked at? Are we pretty confident in being able to keep that funding?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, we will be spent in the next 6 months.
Awesome, thank you.
No further questions? Yes.
Kia ora, Emma. Thank you for your presentation. I just have a question around for our part of the region, as I refer to the Far East, Te Puia Springs around to Pōtaka. Like it doesn't really, it's quite absent in your presentation, but I do refer to the State Highway 35 route security resilience. Can anyone expand on what type of road maintenance or work will be done in that area?
So we will be updating on the specific sites that are under investigation in the next, it's about the next 2 weeks, I think, Ollie.
Yes, I will. It goes right the way around the top of the coast. So
Yeah.
most of the at-risk sites are probably north of Tokomaru. So it will include, it's just, there's too many sites to include on a small map like that to add any value, but rest assured it will go as far right to the boundary where the high-risk sites are.
Thank you.
No further questions? I want to close this up before I call for a mover for the recommendations. Just to give a bouquet to the Transport Agency and the contractors that address all the maintenance work on Highway 35 from here in Gisborne right round to the top end where Waitahi contractors and Higgins, and then you come further south, Downers. The road's in pretty good shape. I've had the opportunity in the last month, 6 weeks to spend a fair bit of time in the Bay of Plenty. So from that perspective, there was a report earlier that I wouldn't say denigrated, but cast aspersions on Highway 35 in terms of no fuel available, slips, and at times out of action. Well, in the last 3 to 4 years, that's not the story at all, and it has been a very important alternative route in terms of route security when the gorge has gone out and going south has gone out. I know it's an extra, but the load that has been on that highway has been huge, and I must say the contractors and our transport agency have done a good job of late looking after that. So from that perspective, well done. Can I have a mover in terms of the recommendations? Thank you. A seconder? Thank you. I'll put that at the table. All those in favour, please say aye. The contrary carried. Let's move forward over the page. Regional Transport Policy Update.
Through the chair, I'll take the paper as read, but as you know, there is the draft GPS submission that staff have prepared, included in your attachments. We discussed the draft New Zealand Rail Plan at the last RTC, attached there, as well as the submission, and committee members got that prior to submitting, and then also a discussion on heavy freight routes, just in summary.
Heavy freight route interests me. The submissions are well done. I read them twice to make sure I knew what it was about.
And myself and the staff are happy to take any questions.
But the heavy freight route comes back to haunt this committee almost every term. And while there have been numerous suggestions and submissions put in front of us, we haven't found an answer, nor have we taken the heavy transport out of the city. So maybe it's something as we look forward to the next plan that we can put some work into.
So we do still have some engagement planned. What is the time frame around that? How ready to go is that?
As I understand that, we've got a draft bylaw review by July. So that's the timeframes we're not intending on moving. So we've got to have that engagement soon. Obviously, we haven't been able to meet in person with our stakeholders that we wish to engage with on that kaupapa. So that July for a bylaw is the date we're still working towards.
Andrew.
So the bylaw review is, what is the bylaw review reviewing? Is that what a new bylaw might look like, or what our current bylaws look like? So we're halfway through the consultation and we've already got a bylaw that's getting drafted.
Through the chair, the heavy freight works are kind of separate to the bylaw development. So what we're doing at the moment is developing every other aspect of the bylaw. We will engage separately on the heavy freight work matter to get a pretty good steer on it, and then see how we can integrate it into the bylaw itself. So we're doing kind of two streams of work at the same time.
We want the bylaw to reflect that engagement and the intended outcome of those routes.
Anything further? That kind of brings us to the end of the meeting. Are there any other issues of importance that we need to note for our staff to have a look at?
Mr. Chair, I have one. The referring to the regional land transport plan for 2021 to 2031. I note that the existing plan, and I brought this up in my interview, makes no reference to the Treaty of Waitangi, no reference to Hapu Iwi. It's with all due respect, it presents itself as being a very bland, almost clinical type document. And I made it again the point, and the chairperson can confirm this at the interview, that if we're going to put a plan together, it needs to be specifically modelled and have the same, it belongs to us as a community, which is quite unique to others. I know at a national level, there's certain specific requirements that need to go in there. But when it comes down to the nuts and bolts and how it's to be implemented, which is the key for all of us around this table, no doubt our community, it needs to reflect our community. I'm not suggesting that it has to be written bilingually. I think that misses the point. It's really the themes that and the values that permeate create that document. So let's, and I'm encouraging our staff to work with us, let's create something specific, unique to our community. And through our consultation process, not just Māori either. All of our community members should have a say. So we design something which is specific to us, lines up with national requirements, but at the same time meets our local needs. So I just put that out there now. And if you want me to write the section on the treaty, I'm happy to do that for you. Kia ora, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Kia ora. Your point is noted. Yes.
Just again on the heavy freight routes with the initial targeted engagement with the forestry industry and federated farmers, I got wind somewhere or other that that was in line with an existing bit of work that you sort of managed to take onto. Do you have other targeted engagement as part of the wider consultation, or is it all sort of broadly in one camp? Yeah, that's my question.
Through you, Mr. Chair. The original intention was to join up a whole bunch of transport-related work together, so we were able to kind of engage as a single process. Because what the problem is, you start to engage over here and engage over there. You've got that overlap in the policy, and it becomes really messy. So the intention before COVID was actually to join up several transport-related pieces of work, both in relation to the revenue and financing policy, but also to our active transport projects, to get kind of a collective and joined up feedback. And that would inform how we go forward with the heavy freight routes. COVID has definitely put a spanner in the works for that. And we may need to review how we go forward. And our feeling is at this stage that the heavy freight route question is probably quite big enough to carry its own consultation forward, but we will need to review that in the short term with a bit of a revised plan.
Nothing further? Yes, Colleen.
Given I'm here to represent people with disabilities, I'd better make this statement. Bear in mind, all of you in this room, that if you make your spaces and your planning accessible for people with disability, you make it accessible for everyone. If you concentrate on any other part of our society, you will exclude. Kia ora.
That kind of brings us to the finish of the meeting. Can I just acknowledge all those who have attended? And you, Emma, sitting up there. and acknowledge our staff for the work they've put into the agenda. You know, this is the first time, and it's good to see representation sitting around the table. We come from diverse backgrounds, and going forward, I look forward to working well with everyone. Meeting closed.